Reuben, it feels like we're just getting to the moment where the NFL goes crazy.
I think we might already be there.
We might be in the middle of it, yeah.
It's kind of been it's been a curious week. It's been an interesting week, but yeah, it's only going to get crazier the next few days.
Yeah. Yeah, it certainly will. This is the Eagle Eye Podcast with Reuben Frank. I'm Dave Zangaro. We are getting really close to free agency. That legal tampering negotiating window begins on Monday. The league year begins on Wednesday. So this is probably our last chance to talk to all you guys before some major news happens in the NFL. But as we've seen this week, it can happen at any given time. But we want to kind of give you a little free agency primer today. We already looked at the Eagles pending free agents. We're going to continue to look at some targets they might look at. We're going to make some free agency predictions a little bit later. And then Rube has a cool story coming out soon, looking back at some under the radar type signings the Eagles have made in the past. But we did want to mention Jason Kelce being a guest host on WIP Wednesday. It was pretty cool. He was on there for 3 hours. And during those 3 hours, he was asked about his future. Said he's still not sure, but it certainly seems like he's leaning toward coming back. Nick Sirianni and Jeff Stoutland called in, which was pretty cool. But the one thing I wanted to talk about with you first, Rube, was what he said about Jalen Hurts, because we've heard a lot of guys back Jalen Hurts in the last year or so, but this was interesting stuff.
It was, and I mean, there was a lot there. When you talk for 3 hours, there's a lot there. But I thought the Hurts stuff was fascinating from him. First, he could, and I have a story up that's got all the quotes up on the site now. But to me, the most interesting stuff was Jason talking about. I mean, here's a team that's trying to replace him. There's no mystery that the Eagles have, been in touch with teams for other quarterbacks, and Jalen knows that. And Kelce talked about, the fans that doubt him, coaches that doubt him, team, whatever. He talked about that, and he said, I don't think it bothers Jalen. And I think this is particularly cogent in light of what just happened with the Colts. And so we're back to, this is no longer an emergency pod, so we're back to, he's now the guy in Washington. But he said, I don't think it bothers Jalen Hurts. I probably wouldn't be a fan of a guy if it did bother him, talking about criticism and doubts. I think at the end of the day, this is what happens in the NFL. Everything is critiqued. You're going to be judged. People are going to tell you you're not good enough, and you're going to have the mental fortitude to believe in yourself, despite all that, to become the best player you can be. I like when people are getting criticized to see their reaction. I don't want to speak for Jalen in terms of this. I'm sure it does piss him off to some extent, but I think it makes him a better player. And I know when I've gone through it, and people certainly have doubted Jalen or Jason Kelce over the years, it's made me a better player. There's a lot of other stuff there, but wow, I think that's a really insightful quote from Jason. And it really kind of, cuts to the core of the difference between Jalen Hurts and his predecessor. His predecessor has a bigger arm. He's a bigger guy. He's more accurate. I mean, he's got a lot of things that Jalen Hurts doesn't. But why is one like the most popular guy in the locker room and a guy that the Eagles are likely to build around and took a team to the playoffs in his first year, and the other guy fell to pieces the last 2 weeks of the season and just got unloaded after his team gave up a first-round pick for him. So, Kelce didn't mention the other quarterback by name, kind of like we won't. But I thought it was I don't want to put words in Kelce's mouth, but it seemed to me that he was kind of making that comparison and just saying how mentally strong Jalen Hurts is, and how the exterior stuff doesn't bother him. He's got a thick skin. It only drives him to be better, whereas some people fall to pieces when they just get criticized a little bit.
Yeah, people forget Kelce in his NFL career dealt with a lot of criticism. People wanted him out of town for a little while. It's funny now to think about it because he's been such a good player, but there were moments earlier on in his career where he didn't play great, and there were questions about, because I mean, with him especially, undersized guy at the position. He had to kind of prove himself more than most players would have. And he still thinks about that stuff. I know he does. When there were moments where he was not this beloved figure in the city, and there were people who wanted him out of here.
Yeah, there was the one year. It was one of the chip years where, everybody wanted to trade him. Everybody wanted to get rid of him, and I can't remember the year. It's kind of a blur. And he said he did not play well by his own admission. I think he did make the Pro Bowl that year. He said it was the worst year I ever played, and he basically rededicated himself to getting better and becoming more detailed and stronger, and became the player he is now. But you're right. I mean, there was a period where people wanted him gone, and he talked about that. And I think he feels a kinship with Jalen Hurts because they've both been doubted at points in their career, and they've both been questioned, and they both had fans, calling for him to be traded or released or unloaded. And, when you have a guy now he's gone from that to being a Hall of Famer, those comments carry they carry a lot of credence.
How'd you think he did on the radio?
He was really good. It's not easy. I've been doing it for 24, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 29 years on WIP, and I'll be on tomorrow 6 to 10. So check it out. I thought he was really good. I didn't listen to the whole 3 hours, but it's not an easy thing to do. I mean, but he's always been so good at thinking on his feet, thinking quick, and he knows something about everything, which is important. Like, he's one of those guys you could ask him about anything in the world, and he'll know something about it. And you need to be able to fake your way through anything when you're doing that. So, and he mentioned, and he's getting toward the end of his career, and he's thinking about what he could do. They need a morning show host when Angela retires. I don't know. I'll throw it out there. Wouldn't shock me. Guy's really popular, and I'm sure he would like to. I can't imagine he would want to coach and put in that kind of time commitment. It's even more of a time commitment than being a player. But radio would keep him involved and keep him close to the team. Ike Reese has become exceptional at it. I think he's very, very good. So, throw that out there. But I thought he did fine.
Yeah,
I'll tell you who's great, by the way.
Yeah.
Shady on NFL Network. He's a star. I mean, he's unbelievable. He's funny. He's insightful. He's knowledgeable. He knows all about. I mean, he was talking about the different running backs coming out in the draft, and he knew about each one. He's preparing. He is really, really good.
Yeah, the one thing I think would kind of hurt Kelce is there's this weird in-between stage, and I think Chris Long is finally getting past that. But when you're an ex-player, people view your words differently than when you're like a radio guy, and you just have to fight through that because you have to be critical at times. And in some cases, you have to be critical of guys you either played with or you played against. And it can get tricky because you're no longer talking as a player. You're talking as a guy on the radio or a guy on TV or a guy with a podcast. And that can be a really tough hurdle for these guys.
It's funny that you say that. I remember when Vi Sikahema retired from the Eagles and went over to, I guess, Channel 6. And one of his first assignments, I mean, he had been with the team the previous year. Kotite had been his coach. And we had a pre-draft press conference like in March or early April. I think his last year as a player was 93. So it was in the spring of 94. And we're all thinking, oh, another jock going to do TV. This is his former team. He's going to go easy on him. And he asked like the second question to Kotite at the presser, and he goes, I still remember we were in the cafeteria on the 4th floor of the Vet, and he goes, Rich, your drafting the last few years has been terrible. What makes you feel like you can do better this year? I was like, yes. And obviously Vi went on and had an incredible run. not just doing sports, but doing news. And I thought he was really terrific. But yeah, it's not an easy thing, especially he's still an active player. But you know what? His discussion about Jalen Hurts was very well rounded. I mean, he didn't just say he's great at everything. He said, look, there's things he has to get better at. He's got to be more accurate, and he knows that. Which, I mean, it adds validity to everything else he says, because it's a three-dimensional evaluation of Jalen. So that was impressive. That's not easy to do, to find, like you said, to find that balance when you're still playing. You're not going to criticize the player, but he was honest about him.
The good news is, for Eagles fans, it doesn't sound like you have to worry about that this year. He's leaning toward coming back. He made that very clear without saying that explicitly, but all the signs all offseason are pointing toward that. And
he even said, I think everybody can see where it's trending.
Yeah.
So he'll be back.
Yeah, you would think so. They have to figure out the contract, but we've talked about it here before. Just pay him. I mean, within reason, pay him and get him back for a year. It was cool to see Nick Sirianni. We joked about it a little bit, but Sirianni and Jeff Stoutland calling in, it just shows you the reverence they have for this guy. How many head coaches or how many players would a head coach call the radio station for?
Yeah, Nick likes being, one of the guys, and he likes when.
Better question: how many guys would Jeff Stoutland call the radio for?
That's fair. Yeah, that was cool. I think Nick might call in all the time and just disguise his voice. This is Joe in Delco. I think Sirianni's doing a great job.
Well, he called in apparently as Nick from South Philly.
Is that right?
Yeah, or that's how they introduced him.
He lives in Jersey.
Yeah, well, that's why you got to throw him off.
Yeah,
throw him off the scent. But the keg of beer was delivered. That was important news from that.
Yeah. As Kelce said, forgot how much beer is in a keg. It's taking me a while to get through that, which I don't believe. I remember I asked him the first time we saw him after the parade. I guess like some spring mini camp in 2018. So it'd only been a few months since the Super Bowl, a couple months probably. And I was at his locker. This is back when we could go to guys' lockers, and I said, "Hey, at the parade, how many beers did you have?" And I'm not gonna reveal the answer, but it was in double figures.
Did he have an answer?
Yeah, he had a guess. Jason, he'll never say I don't know.
He ballparked it.
He ballparked it, and it was a significant number.
Fair enough. We'll leave it at that.
The guy's the best. He's just, I think I wrote a piece the other day or last month, like where he ranks in Eagles history. And it's funny because it kind of has happened in front of our eyes, and you look it up, and I mean, he's up there with Van Buren and Bednarik and Reggie White and Doc. I mean, he is almost at that level as far as what he's meant to this organization and how he's been honored. And I mean, that's where his career is. That's who he is. And, when it happens in front of you, it's it's easy to put these guys in perspective when you didn't you compare Van Buren and Bednarik and Ray. I mean, and I was around for Reggie, but when it's happening now, it's a lot harder to really understand the context, because you're just thinking, oh, it's Kelce. He's, it's Jason Kelce, but he's one of the greatest players in Eagles history. And there's no questioning that now.
Yeah. When you look back at this era of Eagles football, he's going to be the guy you think of most.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Him or Richard Rodgers.
Well, Richard Rodgers has him on different stints. I mean, if that's the way you're judging it, Richard has 4 stints now?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that in a tweet once, and Julian Vandervelde tweeted back. He said he's not even close.
Yeah, Vandervelde always says, call me when they get to double digits.
It's great that he follows who's got multiple stints with the team. What did he have? 12, I think.
It was a lot. It was a ridiculous amount.
Yeah. But it was cool. It was cool, and I just love the fact that Kelce does stuff like that. And he's such, he doesn't try to be a Philly guy. He just is one.
Yeah, he's a normal dude. He really is, and that's the cool thing that he's pretty much. I mean, certainly he's changed in the 11 years he's been here, but his personality hasn't. I mean, he's become a husband and a father and all that stuff, but he's pretty much like you can still go chat to him about anything. He's pretty much the same guy in a lot of ways.
And I think that's something that, and I'm just thinking out loud here. Like I covered Doc and Reggie, and I mean, Doc's one of the best guys I've ever covered, and he was extremely available, and you could talk to him in his locker anytime. Reggie, not so much. Reggie didn't like doing interviews. He didn't do many, maybe one every couple of weeks, and he didn't really say a whole lot. But they carried themselves like superstars, and they were superstars. And there's nothing wrong with that. It was just kind of, that was just the aura about them. But there's none of that around Jason Kelce, and that's not a criticism. I mean, when you're a Hall of Famer, I don't know. There's a certain aura about you. And when you saw Brian Dawkins in the locker room, there was like this, like, wow. Like people would come in and they're like, wow, that's Brian. It's like with Kelce, it's like, he's just as likely to say to you, yeah, I don't want, I mean, it's just everyday conversation, have you seen this movie? What did you think of that article? How stupid is that beat writer? He's just such an everyman. And
I think that's why his greatness kind of like snuck up on you a little
bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're probably right. It's like hanging out with you'd feel more comfortable with Jason Kelce sitting at a corner bar than, at the Hall of Fame, induction. I mean, that's just not him. And
he's going to be so uncomfortable at that thing.
Yeah, he'll be okay. I think he'll
be okay, but you'll see it.
I wonder who's going to, I hate the way they do it now where, they used to have somebody would stand up for you and introduce you. Now it's like on videotape.
Well, I think they'll get back to that.
I hope so. That's not what I was told. I was told that was
really?
Yeah. It was a time thing. So they, the videotape would be like, I think Doc had Troy Vincent and they would play this clip and it's just not the same. Because they
deserve a hug at the top of the stage.
You just deserve to have that introduction, that live introduction. And I wonder who Kelce would pick if he would pick Stout.
If he goes football side, I would think Stout.
Yeah. I mean, some people pick relatives, high school coaches, former teammates. It seems like most people do have a former coach.
I mean, he could pick his brother too.
Yeah. Yeah. There's really no shortage when you've been around that long of candidates, but whoever it is, I plan to be there and plan to have a cold beverage with Jason that night.
All right, let's move on from an all-time Eagles great to a guy who has never, maybe will never play with the team, but an interesting nugget out of an upcoming Takeoff with John Clark podcast. He had Jay Glazer on there, and Jay told him that the Eagles were actually close to a deal for Falcons receiver Calvin Ridley before news of the suspension hit Atlanta and hit the Falcons. And it was kind of a weird deal, apparently, that the Falcons had to shut off any trade talk. Well, they didn't have to, but they did it out of good faith. They shut down trade talks, but they couldn't tell any other team why. So you had these teams like wondering, well, why won't we were talking about a trade and now you're just saying no. Well, we find out he's suspended for the entire 22 season, maybe more. I mean, it's an indefinite suspension through at least 2022. So, but man, that would have really helped the Eagles. I don't know what they would have given up, but he was a guy that, I was asked in a mailbag back in January if I thought the Eagles should be interested. And my answer was absolutely they should be interested.
Sure. Oh, yeah. I wonder how close they were. Maybe some more details will come out on that over the next week or two. But I'm sure the news when it broke that Calvin Ridley had been suspended, the show was actually sponsored by a betting site, which, it's like there's just some kind of disconnect here. I don't want to get into a, big morality thing, but I find it really, considering what he did, the severity of what he did in a league that half the commercials are betting commercials, to me is hypocritical. And there's guys that do much worse than what he did. it was totally legal. I get that it's they're not, they're told they're not supposed to bet. Totally legal bet that he made on his phone while he was inactive. So it's not like he was playing in the game. That's not a full season suspension. I mean, I'm sorry. It's just not. But anyway, that's off topic. What it tells me is that Howie's serious about, and it shouldn't be a surprise, but it said, it tells you how serious he is about, making blockbuster moves this offseason. And that's the way Howie is. He's not shy. He'll shoot, he'll shoot for the stars. And I think that's encouraging just to know that they were involved.
Yeah, and the Ridley thing, it really did seem perfect with that specific player for a lot of reasons. One, I mean, he had been dealing with some anxiety issues in Atlanta. He didn't play the last 2 months of the season, and it was reported during the season that both sides wanted a fresh start. So right away, Howie's ears perk up a little bit. He's going, all right, whenever I can get a guy when there's something like this going on, he's going to take a look. And then, I mean, if you have a guy with mental health concerns right now or mental health issues, what team has shown better that they can handle it than the Eagles? And then you look at it and you say, all right, well, he's on a 5th-year option year in 2022. So that would have been a high salary, but he's good enough. You'd extend him. The whole thing would have worked out. He would have reunited with some Alabama teammates.
Yep.
In Philly. The whole thing would have been really perfect. And it's a shame it couldn't happen. But you're right. I mean, it shows me that they're going to be aggressive and specifically at that position. As much as they say they feel good about where they are with Devontae Smith and Quez Watkins, who they do like. They like Quez a lot. But they need another receiver. They need it bad.
Yeah, and if you can get a guy like that, it frees you up to ideally you want to draft without worrying about filling a need. I think that and this goes for Jalen Hurts as well. The fact that the Eagles try to replace someone, like you can try to upgrade, it doesn't mean you don't like the player. Like I think the Eagles genuinely like or value Jalen Hurts, and that doesn't mean they can't try to get someone better. So it's not like an all or nothing thing. Like, well, Jalen stinks, so we have to go get another quarterback. I mean, you can feel like, hey, Jalen is going to get better. He's going to lead us, and he's a playoff quarterback. But the opportunity to get, a Hall of Fame caliber guy, an elite quarterback, you still have to explore it. So I just think that's important to remember. And, I really like Quez Watkins, but I mean, gosh, the notion of going to get a Ridley, the guy's, he's still, what is he, 26?
27.
Is he 27?
He turned 27.
Yeah. So I like the fact that Howie's thinking that way, and it kind of gets you excited to see what happens next week. And is there going to be a blockbuster? Is there going to be, some big news that might require an emergency podcast Monday afternoon?
Very possible. And I wrote about Quez on Thursday. I think an important thing to remember is it's different with Hurts than it is with, you brought up that comparison. But if they get another quarterback, Hurts isn't playing. They get another receiver, Quez is still playing. It just might matter where. And the good thing about Watkins is that he can play outside and he can play inside. I mean, he played the slot in 2021. He hadn't really played the slot before. A few snaps as a rookie. He was an outside receiver in college. So I look at it like they can go out and they don't have to be like handcuffed and say, we need an outside receiver or we need a slot guy. They can just find a player. And that makes it a lot easier because you can plug and play Watkins either inside or out. I think Devontae, they really like outside, and I wouldn't move him from there. But having that versatility kind of gives them a little advantage here because now they can, the example I used in the story was, maybe they try to get Allen Robinson, but if it becomes too expensive, then they can say, all right, Juju Smith-Schuster, we can sign you because, we'll use a slot guy, we'll move Quez outside. And it's nice that they can just look for a player and not have to find that specific spot.
Yeah, you just summarized your story really well. No one needs to read it now because Dave just kind of gave you the entire story. Now, read the story. It was good. Yeah,
Said the guy who was reading Kelce quotes about Jalen Hurts.
that's yeah, I mean, that's all true. I also think, I think they need more than one wide receiver as well, to really push Rager. Are we saying Rager's name? I can't remember our policy.
He's still here. You kind of have to.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, they're talking about he's the 3. He can't be the 3. He can't be the 4. I'd rather have John Hightower out there. Just, so keep adding players, keep adding receivers, and give the quarterback some real options there.
All right, you want to go through some defensive free agent
Let's do it.
targets? All right, we'll go by position here, and the first one is safety, and it's a really good crop of free agent safeties. Now, some of them are probably not going to hit the market, and that just is what it is. I mean, Jesse Bates, we saw him get the franchise tag. He'll probably get a long-term deal, so he's off the market. And there's some others who aren't going to be available, but it's a deep class here, and the Eagles have a chance to get a good one. The most expensive is going to be Marcus Williams from New Orleans. He's like the top end guy, but there are other options. I look at Justin Reed from Houston as a really strong option. You have Marcus May from the Jets, who has a connection to Denard Wilson, who's the Eagles defensive backs coach. Jordan Whitehead, Deshaun Elliott, Jaron Curse, Malik Hooker. And then I did put Tyrann Mathieu on the list. I think he's going to be expensive. I don't think he'd come here, but he'd be a game changer.
Yeah. I like Whitehead. I think I'm not sure what we're talking about a $6 million player probably per year. I'm just not sure what the plan is as far as money allocations, with safety, but he's a really solid player. He might even be more than that. I don't know. I mean, he's really good. I really like him, and he's young, 25 again, probably. How he loves those guys who put 4 years in. They weren't first round picks, so they're free agents at 25. He was a mid-round pick somewhere. He'd probably, again, I don't know what the price will be, and that's true for all these guys, but he's a really interesting name. I'd love to see him here.
And there's a lot of them in that age range. And it's funny, you think back to the year the Eagles signed Malcolm Jenkins. They had a few options there too. And Malcolm was the one people didn't want, and he ended up being obviously an all-time great free agent signing. So it's tough to nail that. They did it that year, and I think they'll have a chance here. My guy will be Justin Reed. He had such a good start to his career, and then he's tailed off a little bit, but I think there's something there. He's still really young. He ought to want to get out of Houston as bad as possible. So he'd be the guy on top of my list. Do you think they spend money on a safety?
Probably not. Probably not the money that would get one of these top guys.
I don't know. I look at it and I think, what positions will they spend on? And I think receivers a real possibility. On offense, that's probably the top money spender unless something crazy happens at the quarterback spot. And then on defense, those edge rushers get paid so much. We'll go through some of those names. It's hard to imagine them spending a ton on linebacker. They already have Darius Slay's contract at corner. So I think there might be a chance they make a little splash for safety.
I'd like to see it. It's a position that's really in flux. I mean, I think everything kind of it's going to start with Rodney and what they do with Rodney. But yeah, I'd love to see it. I hope you're right.
Yeah. All right. Let's move to, how about cornerback?
I got a guy.
Who's your guy?
A guy who used to be here.
Yeah, he's an interesting name. You're talking about Rasul Douglas, I assume.
Yeah.
He would fit better in this defense than the last defense, and that's kind of the irony of it is they had this guy and they were misusing him because the scheme was different, but he would fit what Gannon does.
Yeah, and we know how much Howie likes bringing guys back. He does that all the time. Rasul is a better player than he was. Like you said, he'd be a better fit. I mean, he had 5 picks in 12 games, 2 pick sixes. And I think playing opposite Slay would really, really be great for him. He'd have some really positive matchups. I mean, he had some good moments when he was here. There were times where I really thought he was on the brink of being a really, really good player. He's around the ball. He's got good instincts. He got hurt. He would get beat on double moves. He get beat deep. When you go through what he's gone through, and I think this kind of goes to what Kelce was saying about adversity. I mean, he was with Carolina in 20, I believe, right? And then
and he played well there for a while.
Yeah, for a while, and then he ended up not even being a starter by the end of the year. But he got off to a good start. But then he was on some practice squads. I think he was with 3 different teams in training camp. He was with 4 teams between the Eagles and Green Bay. And he just kept getting cut. He was on the Cards practice squad when the Packers were just every cornerback was hurt, and they were like, "We're desperate." And they signed Rasul Douglas off Arizona's practice squad, and he goes and has 5 picks in 12 games. And I think he got some All-Pro votes, I believe, a couple All-Pro votes.
The problem is, are you really willing to pay him off of that success?
Yeah, well, that's true with all these guys. How much is that going to translate into big money? Cornerbacks get a lot of money, and like you said, if Slay's got a big contract, you can't. There's only so much you can pay cornerbacks.
And they paid Avante. It wasn't a massive deal, but he's getting top end nickel corner money.
Yeah, and then there's the notion that maybe it was, like a guy like Jordan Whitehead. I mean, has like 4 really solid years in Tampa where he was just a really good, solid player. You feel a lot safer with a guy like that than a guy who had like 12 games and has been on 6 teams in 4 years. So it's a risk. It's a risk when you a guy who just kind of flashed for a short period of time. But it's an intriguing option to me.
Yeah, and there are guys on my list here who have a longer track record and they have a fuller resume. Dante Jackson, former LSU kid who's now in Carolina. Akilla Weatherspoon from Colorado was in Pittsburgh last year on a 1-year deal. Might be able to get you a cheap 1-year deal again. Xavier Rhodes, who's kind of the oddball of this bunch, the super veteran, been around a long time, but knows Gannon, knows the system, knows what they need. And you could also look at it like you get a 1-year rental and you draft a guy and day 1 or day 2 pick, they sit for a little while and then they're ready to play.
Well, if they draft a corner in the first round, which I still think they're going to do, I want that guy playing on opening day. I want him starting on opening day.
Yeah, the problem here is you have to use your crystal ball because free agency happens before the draft.
Sure. Right. Yeah, but I mean, I think they have a pretty good idea. I mean, you don't know everything, but where they're picking, they have a pretty good idea who's going to be there, who they like, and what they're going to come out of it with. Not completely, but they have a sense of it. So, but yeah, it's certainly you don't want to end up paying $1 million, $10 million for a cornerback and then drafting one in the first 20 picks. So we'll see, but. I'm intrigued by Rasul. I think he genuinely. Every time I watched the Packers, he was knocking a ball down. He was jumping around. He was reading the quarterback, and he played really instinctive, smart, productive around the ball football. And we'll see how much that little stretch raises his value. If it's reasonable, I'd be interested.
And the last guy on my list was DJ Reed, who it's kind of a strange case because he's short. He's 5'9", but he's been an outside corner. And I know the size. I like him a lot too. He's a really solid player. And I think people here are going to be scared about his size because of Avante, but Avante hadn't shown that he could play outside corner in this league. Reed has. He's been a pretty good corner. So the size there doesn't bother me as much. But I still get why some people are like, kind of trot out a little guy.
Yeah, I can see that. But, he's got a track record of playing outside. Avante didn't. And I wouldn't worry about it, honestly. There's been 5'9" corners forever.
Yeah. All right. How about want to go linebacker next?
Sure, let's go linebacker.
Work our way in. And before we even get to the guys on the list, another one became available I wanted to bring up. Jordan Hicks, old friend. Solid player.
Yeah.
I mean, he's never going to be a star probably.
He was for a few weeks. He had like 7 interceptions in like a month, but I believe he's the last Eagle with 5 interceptions in a season, I believe. Mm-hmm. How old is he now? Would he come out in 14, 15? 15. He was in the chip draft, right? In 15 with Nelly.
3rd round.
Yeah. So he's going into year 7. Yeah, I don't know. Read some of the other names.
Okay. And some of this is a little difficult because I have a Sam or two in here. But for the off-ball guys, Devondre Campbell is going to be expensive, Green Bay linebacker, but they're in a situation in Green Bay where they probably can't keep him. They probably can't. They have a lot of guys they probably can't keep because of their financial situation. He's a really good player. He's still just 28. I mean, an all-pro. He's a really good player. How about a guy like Anthony Walker? Played on a 1-year deal in Cleveland last year. Has some familiarity with Gannon.
Another one of those ex-Colts.
Ex-Colt. Then another guy on my list was Leighton Vander Esch, who people might roll their eyes at a Cowboy, but this is, I mean, was his rookie year 2018. He was a Pro Bowler. And even if he never gets back to that, he can still be a decent player in the league, right?
How much are you scared away by the fact that the Eagles have never signed a free agent from the Cowboys who's been good? Not one.
It can't scare you, can it? Like,
no.
Really? Like, I get it can scare
crazy.
It can scare us and it can scare fans, but the Eagles can't look at it like that, can they?
No. But it is interesting. I mean,
it's a long list of guys too.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Orlando Scandrick had one pretty good game, but
yeah, he made up for that the other way when he left.
Yeah, he did. He did. Remember talking to Malcolm after his tirade? That was awesome. Malcolm
was ready for that.
He took
don't need like that in the locker room.
Yeah,
remember that?
That was great. Is that it? Is it? You have more names or?
Anthony Barr. And honestly, when you're looking at Gannon connections, it's probably wiser to look at Vikings connections than it is Colts, because the Colts is really Eberflus. But Barr's older. He would fit that Sam spot. He'd be a heck of an upgrade over Jannard Avery. I don't know how much he has left. He's not the player he once was. But you'd plug him and play him, and he'd give you a high level of play at that Sam spot.
Yeah, I mean, I always liked Anthony Walker. He's just a really kind of solid. He's not going to make a lot of big, huge plays, but he's a solid guy. He's tough against the run. Durable, doesn't miss time. He's young too. I mean, I don't know, so many of these guys are, guys come out at 21 now and they're free agents at like 24, 25. And it's crazy, but there's some interesting names here. And
I have another one that's not on my list.
Yeah.
Rashaan Evans, former first-round pick. Yeah, former first-round pick out of Alabama. They had him playing off ball in Tennessee, and he was out of position. He ended up getting buried on the depth chart. It's fun right now for me looking at guys, now that I kind of understand what that position looks like in Gannon's defense and what he wants it to look like. Finding guys who fit that, and he would be one for me that fits that. And you're trying to project a little bit, but probably wouldn't cost much. Ton of athleticism. he was a first-round pick for a reason. It didn't work out in his first stop. I kicked the tires on that.
I'm kind of intrigued, honestly, about Van Der Esch. And I'm kind of kidding about the Dallas thing. Obviously, that's, but they're in such cap trouble that they can't keep everybody. I think he's still a good player. I don't think he'll ever be, what he was in 18, but he's another young guy. He's 25 or just turned 26, and he's solid. I mean, he played 17 games last year, so he was healthy. He was productive. I'm interested in him. And
it's amazing how many guys have failed. It's amazing.
It's crazy. And I'm sure if they do sign Van Der Esch, I'll do that story. I'll like the worst Eagles free agents from the Cowboys. I remember Chris Bonial. It was one of the Eagles' first free agents after Lurie bought the team, and he was, even in his presser, he said, not only did we get better, we made the Cowboys worse. And and Bonial, I think he was the most accurate kicker in NFL history. And he got here and he was like 8 for 17. He was missing extra points, and he didn't last. And what did he last? 1 year, maybe? I don't even know if he lasted a year. So there's been a ton of them. And you can't look at that, but it is really fascinating.
Yeah, it is. You want to move to defensive lineman?
Yeah.
I'll kind of lump the edge and the tackles together just to make it a little easier on us. But there are some edge options. The problem is, and we've talked about it with Derek Barnett, these guys get paid a ton. Jadeveon Clowney's out there. He's going to get paid. Hassan Reddick, I know, is your guy. There are options. Harold Landry was on this list. He just got a mega deal from the Titans. I'm sure the Eagles would have at least listened to that. Justin Houston is a guy who, if you were looking for a 1-year type of deal, he'd be out there. Charles Harris, former first-round pick. Dante Fowler, don't know what you think about that. There are options. The problem is these guys get paid so much.
Yeah, and it's going to be really, really hard to upgrade through free agency at edge rusher. I mean, if Derek Barnett is projected to get $12.5 million a year and had 2 sacks, I think you're better off just drafting a guy. I mean, they just don't have much. That's the problem. You can take your chances on someone based on traits. Maybe you find somebody off someone's practice squad. Maybe Cameron Malvo type of guy, comes in and helps, but it's so unlikely. I think your best shot to get an edge rusher at a reasonable price who can help out is through the draft. And you might have to take a couple of them because if you take one in the first round, that's great, but you still like, how much can you count on 34-year-old BG coming off an Achilles? So, I mean, the only known quantity right now is Sweat, and he's had half of a really good year. So they need reinforcements, and I just don't know if it's possible to do that through free agency.
I think maybe they go after go ahead.
They're already paying Sweat, $40 million over 3. BG's got, what's his cap figure, like 9 something next year. Mm-hmm. So you're going to sign a 5-sack guy for $8 million? I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, maybe you find they're probably going to get priced out of the high end guys. Maybe you find a rotational type player, Kamoko Toure, a guy who has some familiarity with Gannon, something like that.
How much is he really going to help you, though?
I mean, the bar's low, but better than Ryan Kerrigan.
Well, yeah. This mug had as many sacks as Ryan Kerrigan. This mug had 3 fewer tackles last year than Ryan Kerrigan.
Well, that's the point, though. I mean, if you had a decent player in that rotational spot, it would have made them a lot better.
Yeah, I still think the draft is the way to go.
Well, yeah, I'm saying both.
No, I'm saying more than one draft pick, I guess. I
Okay.
just don't know if you're going to help yourself in free agency with an edge. Maybe there's a guy they like who won't break the bank. But if that's the case, other teams like him most likely, and that'll drive his price up. Now we'll see.
Yeah.
The prices for, I mean, defensive end prices are going up like gas prices.
Yeah. You were happy to get that in.
It was terrible. It was awful.
I had a moment at the pump the other day. My gas cap is on my passenger side, and I'm in Jersey, so they have to do it for you. So I have my window rolled down, and the guy fill it regular. And there was a moment where like it had been going on for a while. I was pretty close to E. And I turn around to like glance at it, and he must have saw the look on my face because I hear him say, "You want me to stop it?" I was like, no, just let it go. I'm sorry.
Why is it when you're in a rent-a-car and you pull up to get you've been in enough rent-a-cars with me at like 4 a.m. getting gas on the way to the airport. I always park on the wrong side. Like if I park because you never know where because you don't get
on the dash they have a little gas pump with an arrow.
I learned that this past or 2 years. I guess I learned that in Carolina. I did just
learn. Good to know.
Yeah. But I actually there's 2 gas stations in my town, and on what's today? Thursday? On Monday, one of them was like everything. It was a day everything went from like 419 to 439.
Mm-hmm.
So the one gas station at 439, and the other didn't have a number up there. So I'm like, that's weird. Maybe it's less. So I just kind of like swung by just to see what the price was. It was 419. It's like, oh, 419. And like everywhere else was 439. They were just slow to raise it. So I hurry up and get some gas in here before they raise it. And I drove by like 2 hours later and it was 439. So I was feeling really good about myself. I saved 20 cents times 12 gallons. So I saved a couple bucks. So it's funny. But
when I was in Death Valley, they have this gas station in the park because the park is huge. It's the biggest park in the country south of Alaska. So you're going these long distances. So you have to kind of plan out, like basically get gas every time you can.
Right.
And they have one in the Furnace Creek area. When I was there, what was that, a month ago? It was $6.98 a gallon. Wow. I can't. You probably have to take out a loan to get it right now, but they kind of have you. You're in a tough spot there.
I was looking at like all the gas things like have enough room for 3 digits. Like what happens when it goes over $10? What are they gonna like? There's no room on the LC like on the LCD sign. It goes up to $9.99 presumably.
I hope we don't find out. All right, defensive tackles.
Yeah,
they could use some depth there. They have Fletcher, they have Javon Hargrave, they have Milton, but they kind of use him at both spots. But they could get a little better there. I don't think they're going to break the bank for a defensive tackle, given that they have Fletch and Hargrave. But Tim Settle from Washington kind of sticks out to me. BJ Hill is another option. Guy who got traded last year and ended up playing pretty well.
I like BJ Hill, by the way.
Yeah, I do too. I still don't know why he got traded. The Giants traded him, and he played pretty well for the Bengals.
Giants don't really know what they're doing, so I think that's part of it.
Pretty clear. Do you think that they'd spend any money on a defensive tackle? Probably not big money, right?
No, I think it's another position that makes sense to draft just because Hargrave has one more year. Fletcher is getting up there. I think it's a position that probably could be addressed in the draft. I like Milton, but like you said, he's kind of a combo guy. If they can get a bargain, yeah, but I don't think it's a priority.
All right, that was all the positions. That was fun. Don't have a specialist list for you. Haven't been scouting punters from other teams, which isn't true. Actually, they do need a punter. All right, you want to go with some free agency predictions?
Sure.
You seemed unsure about that.
I don't think I prepared for this.
Okay. Do you want me to go first then?
Yeah.
Okay. My
I missed
first,
this in the budget.
we did talk about this, right?
I know we did, but I was
Okay.
so buried in Mike Zordich's first contract as an Eagle that I whiffed on it. But go ahead. No, I'm kind
Okay.
of ready.
All right. My first one is I think they are going to spend maybe not wild money, but significant money on a safety in free agency. They're going to sign a starting safety in free agency. And I don't think that stops them from bringing back Rodney on, a 1 year, $3 or $4 million deal. But I think they're gonna find a young out of that group I mentioned. If I had to pick one, I'd go Justin Reed. I think they're going to sign a safety.
I agree.
Okay.
I think they're going to sign Leighton Vander Esch. I talked myself into this.
Okay.
That's my prediction. I like him. It's funny because like the year he had as a rookie, if that's the bar, he'll probably never do that again. But he's still a pretty good player, and the chance to get him, I like it. I like that idea. I sold myself on that.
Okay. Here's another one for you. Derek Barnett is a day one of free agency signing, and he gets over 10 mil a year.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think he's going to be a first 10 minutes type of guy, like a quarter after 12.
Yeah.
Shefty's going to be like Derek Barnett has agreed to a 4-year, $46 million deal with the Jaguars. Something like that.
I don't know if it'd be the Jaguars. I don't know if Doug wants that.
Well, no, I don't want to. I'm just throwing a name out there, but yeah, Doug might really like his potential. I don't know. I agree. I think he's gonna make a fortune, and everyone in Philly is gonna be like, "What the heck?" And I think he's gonna disappoint some team. I think we've seen what he is. I just think he's going to be a 4, 5, 6 sack guy, and maybe he has a career year. He has 8. He'll get some good pressures. He'll get people thinking there's really an elite player in there, But maybe he's had 4 coaches in 5 years, so maybe some stability will help. But to me, he's just a guy who's going to commit a bunch of penalties and frustrate some defensive coaching staff like he did here.
Do you have another one?
No.
Okay. I have a couple more here. I'll get your take on.
What do you got?
I'll agree. I think they're going to sign a veteran receiver. I don't think it's going to be a top end guy, but I think they're going to add someone in free agency. Zach Pascal's a guy who sticks out to me just because of the familiarity, but I think they're going to find some kind of veteran.
Yeah, I think we've been kind of on the same page with that. I agree. I do think it might be more of a higher profile guy. I wouldn't rule out. I mean, the fact that they're involved in Ridley tells you that they're maybe ready to spend some assets on it, some money. I still think Allen Robinson makes some sense. There's going to be a lot of teams that are interested in him. Maybe last year will hurt his value. I wouldn't be concerned with that. It was a mess last year. I think the Eagles are going to sign Allen Robinson.
Wow, that'd be a huge signing. Because without Mike Williams on the market, what do you got? 4 for $60?
Yeah.
I mean, you're talking about Allen Robinson is probably the biggest free agent on the market. I guess Amari Cooper will be, but he's not technically on the market yet.
Right. I think I might rather have Allen Robinson than Amari Cooper.
Why?
Just more. He's a really stable guy. I just wonder about Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper's a incredible talent. I don't know.
I'd take if they were the same price. I'd take.
Well, they're not going to be the same price. I mean, Amari Cooper's going to get more than Allen Robinson.
Yeah. Are you factoring that in?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to make this cap friendly.
Okay. And I have one more, and it's that Javon Hargrave gets a contract extension.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he has 1 year left on his deal. They can limit. He has a big cap hit this year. They can get themselves some cap money. They can extend one of their best defensive players. And he's still 29, I think. So he has a few more years left. He doesn't have the mileage that like a Fletcher Cox had at this point in his career. So that I would make that move from them. And I think they will. Maybe it won't come at the beginning of free agency, but at some point I think they're going to extend him.
I'd be fine with that. I think it would be a smart move. Well, if we're gonna throw that kind of stuff in there, I'll say Miles Sanders is going to get a contract. Maybe not immediately, but I think come August, September. I know there's a really large segment of Eagles fans that thinks running backs are interchangeable, and you can find guys like Miles Sanders falling off trees, but I think he's really talented. I don't think he's going to be super expensive. Howie said, I mean, if he could stay healthy, you're talking about a Pro Bowl type player. So if they're really going to emphasize the run, as much as maybe not as much as last year, but it's going to be a big part of what they do. Having a guy like him makes a lot of sense. And I don't think it's going to cost that much. Yeah,
I think that the reason I included Hargrave now is because if there's a reason with Miles, there's not a reason to do it now. As
far as cap, right? There's no reason.
Yeah. With Hargrave though, get yourself some money to spend this year, which would help them.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah. All right. Before we finish this up, do you want to just you have this list of under the radar free agents you've been talking about? Why don't you just give me a couple of your favorites on the list?
Yeah, and I was thinking like. We've all seen stories, or we've probably all done stories. I know Dave and I at different times have done stories on the best free agents in Eagles history. Brandon Brooks, Malcolm Jenkins, Troy Vincent, Ricky Waters. He was an offer sheet. Irving Fryer. Who else is in that group? Asante. But I wanted to do like the free agents that at the time were not blockbuster moves. They were like, like when you read the paper in the old days, do they still have newspapers? I don't even know. But like there'd be a story and like it'd be a note story. So like the headline would be like Indy Kalu tears ACL out for the season. And it'd be like 8 inches on that. And then there'd be a little headline under that says like, Andy Reid says Javon Curse won't play Sunday, and then like the third thing on there would be like the Eagles signed Mike Zordich. Like I was looking for those things that didn't even get their own headlines. And it took, thank God for newspapers.com. It's the greatest site ever. And without it, I wouldn't have been able to do the story. But anyway, I wanted to find the under the radar free agents who really became significant players for the Eagles. And the whole story will be on our site tomorrow. We're kind of violating our policy of not talking about stories till they're posted. It's like when I worked in a record store, we weren't allowed to play music in the store that we didn't actually have for sale. Like you couldn't play, like if you were out of something, you couldn't play it. If you didn't have it in yet, you couldn't play it because you're trying to sell that product. Anyway, I came up with guys like Riley McKenzie in 95, who, he was a 10-year pro. He'd never made a Pro Bowl. Washington was done with him. And the Eagles signed him to a 2-year deal, minimum wage, and he became a really important starter at center for 2 playoff teams in 95 and 96. That kind of guy is who I found. And some of these guys even like signed in the middle of the season, which that's really like under the radar. I found one on Juquay Thomas. Remember Juquay Parker?
Parker then Thomas, right?
It was Thomas then Parker.
Thomas then Parker. Okay.
Isn't that a furniture company? Thomas and Parker?
Don't know.
Check that out. Where's Ben? Ben knows that kind of stuff.
Big
Is there a furniture company? Parker. But anyway, like he came in. He was 27. He had been in the league as a special teamer with the Titans. He had never started a game. I think he had like 4 career sacks in 4 years with Tennessee. And he came here. He was here 7 years and had He was a starter for 5 years. He had like 35 sacks. He became a really good pass rusher, a really good, rotational guy. Jerome McDougal didn't work out. Hugh was at the end of his career, and Jaquay he changed his name, but he was a really effective pass rusher, and he was a real afterthought when they signed him. It was one of those, dot type of signings. So that's a sampling of the kind of guys I have in the story. It was fun to do, and I don't have waiver claims. I don't have undrafted rookie free agents. These are all guys who were on another team, and they got either cut or they were a free agent, and the Eagles signed them. So it was fun to do. I like that kind of stuff.
How did you handle 2017?
Well, I didn't, and that's the thing. Like you could put anybody from, Patrick Robinson from that team, Nigel Bradham, Corey Graham, Stefan Wisniewski. There were so many guys on that team that were,
Chris Long.
Chris Long was one of them. LeGarrette Blount, not so much. He had 17 touchdowns the year before, led the league in touchdowns. J.J. was a trade, but there was like 6 to 8 of those guys on that team who were just kind of passing through, and they just all happen to have big years. I believe I have one guy from that team. I just didn't want to fill it up with all guys from 2017. So I have.
Don't tell us.
I'm not going to tell you. I have one player from that team, and one other person who was involved with that team is on there as well.
Interesting. Maybe guess that at Rube on Twitter. See if you get it right.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do that. And I tried to get, free agency started in 1993, and I tried to have all eras. So I got some guys from the 90s, some guys from from the Ray Rhodes era, from the Big Red era, and some recent guys as well. So it was fun to do.
Cool. All right. You got anything else before we wrap this up? We've gone
one
long
other
here,
quick thing.
Yeah.
I wrote this story, and it kind of got buried because as soon as the story was posted, the Colts and Washington, I can't say one team name, and I can't say the name of the guy who got traded, so it's like tricky here. The trade happened as soon as the story was posted. It got lost, but it's a story about how Keith Jackson, the great Eagles tight end, was really a trailblazer for a free agency with his lawsuit against the NFL in 30 years ago, 1992. And the players, a small group of players, actually beat the NFL and created free agency that we now know. And I just wrote a story about the whole process, how it came to be, how Keith Jackson was involved. Because it's kind of forgotten. Like, we take free agency for granted, but up until 92, it didn't exist for players. If you basically accepted what the team offered you, or you retired. I mean, those were your options. You couldn't go sign with another team once your contract was up. The team held your rights unless they released you or traded you or whatever. So it wasn't all that long ago that the players just had no rights whatsoever, and a small group of players challenged that and as an antitrust violation, and they won. And I wrote about that, so that story's still up on our site too. So check that one out.
Yeah, and now Derek Barnett's going to get $11 million a year. It's crazy how times change
when he does.
Yeah. If you enjoy the Eagle Eye podcast, please rate and subscribe wherever you get your pods. If you're watching on YouTube, please click the like button and subscribe there as well. Thank you for listening to the emergency pod we did earlier this week. Next time we talk to you, the NFL world will be going crazy. For Reuben, I'm Dave. We'll speak soon.